Hello there, and welcome to a special edition of the Tony Robbins podcast. My name is Mary B, and I'm here with Sage Robbins.
Hello, Mary B.
Hello,
Thank you.
Sage Robbins. And, we're sitting down, and the impetus of this edition, this episode of the podcast, happens to be Mother's Day 2022. But we want to make a special announcement right out of the gates in that we don't want this to be another podcast that's just for moms, for moms, by moms. That's not what this is at all. So disclaimer right on the upfront that this is a conversation for everyone. And having said that, I do want to ask you, Sage, what is motherhood to you? And then why should everyone stick around for this conversation? Don't turn it off yet if you're like, oh, here we go, a conversation for moms again.
Well, it's beautiful. Thank you, Mary B. I think the definition and the reality of motherhood has evolved over the years for myself. And experientially, my own path to actually being a biological mother and being a mother has been over a 21-year flight. And what I recognize now, having a child, is that mother energy has been alive in me always. And as a younger woman, I wanted that selfish identity or longing to be a mother. And at times when I didn't recognize the gift of like mother energies were already flowing through me, I think almost like a broader view from today's standpoint, the way I perceive it is, and the way I experience it is, motherhood is really, it's sponsoring a life. And we've had the gift, we're both new moms at this stage, to experience that with a child. And yet I also recognize that every day of my life, every day of all of our lives, life gives us an opportunity to serve life, to sponsor life, to support life, to love life, and an individual, whether that be through, helping support an animal or, taking care of our parents. I think that's the beautiful gift of this rhythm and this cycle of life. If life comes full circle and allows us to touch it in a meaningful way. So I think whether we're male, we're female, we all have both, mother and father energies within us. And at this stage, I think just the awareness of and the cultivation of mother energies is what really heals. If you think of every great, especially a mother who is well in mind, she has that capacity to unconditionally love, accept, allow, understand. She's compassionate even if, her beloved or her child has behavior that's maybe less desirable. There still may be consequences, but there's a universal knowing within her of knowing her beloved's essence. And I think, in the world today, somehow that's been lost, lost of the innocence that we're all here and we all meet in this, thing called Earth School. And, we're all doing the best we can, and we all miss at times, just like our children will, we can all make mistakes. But that unconditional aspect of love, it changes the world. And it changes our life by experiencing it as a mom. I mean, I don't know for yourself, but it certainly, changed mine. But it also makes me recognize that, oh my gosh, this was happening before I was ever a mother. And this is happening every day of my life when, we're able to serve those around us.
Wow, Sage, that's a really beautiful notion. I love that. And there was a lot in there. So I want to follow up on a few things. Of course, the notion of unconditional love and the way it can be a balm and change our lives and our world. But the other thing that you said that I just find so interesting is that we sponsor life, that motherhood to you is sponsoring life. So again, before we lose those high-powered alpha achievers out there, if we haven't lost you yet, if you're listening to this, hear that this really truly is not just for mothers, because as you heard Sage say, you call it sponsoring life. That's not kind of specific to any gender or anything. That's a very interesting word to use. To me, the word sponsor, I want to know what that means to you, because to me, it conjures up images like in the connotation, say, for example, in the context of AA, for example, like your father,
Yes.
who has over 50 years of sobriety, and he is such a unique example. He sponsors so many men in the program. And so sponsorship to me is one who kind of takes responsibility to mentor, to, you called it sponsor life. I think that's a really beautiful way to say it. I think that means to me to advocate for life as a teacher, as a coach, as a chaperone, as a mentor. I just want to put other words to it. So if
Yes,
we lose you at mother, what else, what else does that mean, a sponsor of life?
Well, I think, generally it's like we offer our life in service to another. So whether it's, it expresses in so many different forms. Obviously, you mentioned, AA, my mommy and daddy are both, in the program, and they certainly sponsor people. There's opportunities for us to offer our life in a meaningful way, to offer our time. Sometimes it's not even being a teacher or a mentor. Sometimes it's actually just being an ear and, having another feel seen and appreciated and loved in a meaningful way. And there's so many roles and identities that we could put on that. You could really think of any role, and I feel like those roles, those identities, they offer us a thread if we're really connected to our hearts and we understand why we're put here on this planet, to really connect and to be present with others and to offer our life in service to another. I think I think we're all called to do that. And we do it in all of our own unique way. I think that's, it all comes together and it all expresses in its own unique way. Some people really have a passion for animals and they're sponsoring animals and maybe helping them through a shelter or, saving them out of, slaughter or something of that nature. Or it can touch, life expresses and animates through us in such unique ways. But I think that's how I perceive at this stage of my life, motherhood, especially looking back to when I quote unquote wasn't a mother. She was expressing those mother energies. They're universal,
right? And when you say mother energies, I think, and we've talked about this before, Tony talks about it, especially at his program, your program, Date with Destiny, that there is a kind of masculine and feminine energy that we all have both, some spectrum of both, and there's a wholeness to that.
Yes.
And so in the same way that you and I as women have access to our masculine, in the same way that men have access to their feminine, and there are many archetypal, historical examples of mother divine energy. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit about these long-standing examples that we have in our culture. Different cultures express them different ways. Some examples that come to mind for you, I'm sure.
Well, gosh, if you look back historically at ancient cultures and societies, Mother Divine was utterly revered. Throughout Egypt, Greece, throughout the East, there was different archetypes, all the many faces of Mother Divine and how she expresses, and usually unique to the culture. If you look at modern religion today, whether it be Catholicism, Mother Mary, beloved Guadalupe from Mexico, Kuan Yin, the embodiment of compassion and mercy, Lady Tara from Tibetan culture and lineage, and as well Kali and Durga from India or from the East, they all express fractals or the many faces of Mother Divine.
Yes, that's right. I love the different archetypes. And you and Tony teach this in your Platinum seminar, even the different archetypes of woman. We were speaking with a friend of ours the other day who was talking about the 4 mothers in Judaism, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. I personally grew up in a household steeped in the Catholic faith. My father went to an elementary school. He grew up in New York City. He went to an elementary school in Queens called Our Lady of Perpetual Help, which is just a notion I really love as one way to refer to the Blessed Mother. There's one way to refer to the Blessed Mother as the Untier of Knots.
Yes.
Or Our Lady of Golden Happiness. And all these different are, Queen of Peace, Comforter to the afflicted. These ideas. And to me, when I think about what being a mother, what tapping into feminine energy means, that is the essence of what I strive for. And in times when I feel out of balance, that's what I hope to get back to, is these core essentials, like untying knots, like golden happiness, like comforting the afflicted. And I think that's, to me, the essence of the universality of motherhood. But I do think that wholeness is found in men and women and children, as we see in our little one. That just, I mean, this children just brim with this naturally.
It's beautiful to recognize the, divine attributes that we're all born with, and you expressed, I think it's such a beautiful metaphor, the untire of knots. If you think of any well-minded mother, when our little ones are conflicted or having a challenge, you help them through your love, through your compassion, through your empathy in those moments, to help to untangle any knots internally within mind, or any upset, or through inquiry, asking a question that helps bring a broader perspective. That's love. It's nourishment. It's mercy. It's compassion. All the forgiveness. Once again, it's like, if your child has a behavior that is less ideal, there's such a vastness of acceptance and a vastness of forgiveness, because it's our nature when we are in our essence to express that. It's our nature to offer that. Love is just extending, through us when we are in our true nature and in our true essence.
Sage, that is beautiful, and I love the words that you're putting to it, the vastness of forgiveness, the nourishment, the mercy, the compassion. You mentioned the word compassion, of course, a few times here, and one, I'm a word nerd, and one little fact I'm tempted to bring up here is that I've learned that in Hebrew, the word for compassion shares the same root word in Hebrew as the word womb.
Yes.
And so this likeness between compassion and womb, I think, is a really interesting connection. And, even sometimes in seminars, if you guys have ever been with Tony in a seminar, you may have heard him ask, well, what if your child had, the most horrific behavior you could imagine? Imagine the worst case scenario. Wouldn't you still love your child? And of course, you would frown upon their behavior if it was truly the most horrific thing you could imagine. But take it to the extreme. Wouldn't you still love your child?
Yes.
And undoubtedly, the person always says, yes, of course I would. No matter what my child did, I would love them. Like, there would never be a lack of love. And so again, here's that essence of the universality of what we're talking about, and why it's not just for mothers. Because imagine if we could extend that kind of unconditional love and acceptance in every direction, not just to our own children, but to the far left, to the far right, whatever. Think of the people that make you go, oh, not them.
Yes.
But what would a world look like if we could all love each other with that mother's love? Whoa. In a world that we see stricken with war right now, when people say, what's the answer? I think there's a hint of it somewhere in what we're talking about right now.
I agree. And I think, in an external world right now where there is such confusion and discord and externally blaming, sometimes innocently shaming, or, this versus, good versus bad, or, this side versus that side. I don't know. There's a sweet middle ground. And in that space of understanding and connectedness, to recognizing, I think, just the human experience. I think that's where we all meet. We all have our trials and tribulations, and we all have circumstances that are painful. Our little ones have circumstances that are painful in moments, and the beautiful gift of holding the space for another, the beautiful space of presence, of beingness, of a lot of times we think that we have to do something, and I think it's also, there's the gift of not doing, actually just sitting with somebody. If you've never had the privilege to sit with somebody when they're transitioning and leaving this earth, there's as much of a sweetness and a beauty in that reality as there is birthing into this existence. I've had the privilege to be with a few different individuals. And I don't know, there's just such an aliveness because there's nothing else but, the breath of that moment. Life is so ripe. There's such a beauty. And I think that's, once again, those mother energies, she renews, she restores, she offers, she gives of herself, and adapting and tuning to the circumstance. I think once again, it's like any great mother walks in and, you're feeling and you're tuning to the room or to your family and seeing what's needed or not needed. I think that's the gift of our awareness and practice as offering both the gift of mother and father energies, both, because they both have a place. We just happen to be speaking of of the mother principle. Yes.
Right. And you hit there on several kind of virtues and values that, whether it's offering and nurturing and, a curiosity, a holding the space, a compassion, an assumption of innocence, a loving, all loving nature. What do you think are the important values and virtues to instill in children, or maybe it's to exemplify yourself as a mother, as a parent, as a sponsor of life?
It's a beautiful question. My experience and what I recognize is that these little ones come through with such wisdom, such innate knowledge, such an innate joy and capacity to love and to connect. So I don't know that we're instilling, but I do feel that, for us to be an example of a beautiful human being, whatever that looks like for you, to embody and to live the attributes, because we can't ask of another what we're not offering or living ourselves, whether that be kindness and consideration or gratitude of life. It's so interesting because, like, in my own path and watching, our little one here develop and grow and evolve. It's number one, all I want is her happiness. I have no expectation of what she should be or shouldn't be. I want what she wants. I think love wants what, the other wants. I want what makes her happy, what she feels attracted to or pulled towards, and I think that, I don't know. I think that's, it's different than I thought it would be, because I think there would be so much more that I would be teaching her. And I've never felt more like a student. I've never felt more like just learning by watching, by observing, and actually doing less. Oh, we have a visitor.
Visitor in the studio.
Hi, Tony.
Visitor in the studio. Hi, Tony.
How are we doing?
Good, how are you?
I just want to say, where's your little camera here? So you on the camera?
There he is.
There he is. I just wanted to say that these are the two best moms I know and the best people to cover this subject, because they don't just mother little ones. They mother everybody they love. They just bring a level of unconditional love that only mothers know how to give to everybody. I just want you guys to know I'm your biggest fans. And for all those listening, I hope you really enjoy this podcast, and I hope you have a magnificent Mother's Day. Love you, honey.
Thank you, Tone. Well, that was a nice surprise. And, Tony brings up an interesting point right there, because your path to motherhood was a journey, as it is for so many couples, for so many women, men, folks of all strokes, mothers and others, anyone who's wanting to bring a child into the world. It can truly be a journey. And so yours was over 2 decades. But we know that you, of course, were a mother. You embodied this energy well before you, quote unquote, became a mother. Mm-hmm. But even that, I don't even like to put that language to it, because, and I think it's important that we mark that out here explicitly, is that the path to motherhood is not just carrying a child, mm-hmm. or even, having a child. Mm-hmm. This is not that. And you were a mother and embodied this mother energy long before this baby got here. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to, those of us, if you know Sage well, everyone around us here in our inner circle, everybody kind of calls her Ma, hey Ma, hey Ma, Mom and Dad, Mama. So she was a mother to many before this little person came to earth. And I'm wondering if you could, I would assume that you felt that that was part of your role even then.
Yes.
And how was that different? And can you talk specifically about being a mom before baby, without baby, not even just before, without baby altogether?
It's true. I feel like I've been a mom my whole life, whether it's taking care and mothering my family, or I have a soft spot for elderly people. Those that enter this home, or our workspace, or our sphere, or even animals.
Not just people. I was going to say, she does not discriminate any species, squirrels, birds, you name it. If it rocks up our driveway, it's coming in. She's going to mother it.
I definitely have a soft spot for animals. And, we had this beautiful pelican that was all entwined and entangled with fishing wire. And, it was like one of the magic moments of my year last year, just the interaction helping this little one get free. And so it was it's been a longer journey than expected to motherhood. And I started, I think the first time I ever carried life, I was in my mid-20s. And it was the first time I also miscarried. I was around 26 or 27. I was 5.5 months or 5 months pregnant. And at that time, I will never forget the, grieving, the loss, the longing, all those realities to that experience. And at the time, I didn't have the wisdom I have now. I can look back now and really see the perfection of life and watch all of life unfold so perfectly. And, my experience was, as I let go of what I wanted, I know this sounds crazy, but, in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, I very much wanted to have a child. And, there's so many external pressures and, family dynamics. It's like, oh gosh, when are you going to have a little one? When are you going to, you know what I mean? And so, I think it was collective, and as well, it was my own. But it was for me. And as I surrendered that, as I accepted what life was offering me, life was so much more beautiful than what I was desiring. And I didn't know it at that time. I think that's a beautiful gift of evolution as we as human beings. It's like, we, through life, it humbles us and opens us and tunes us. And through that process of surrender and accepting what life was offering me, this life became that much more beautiful because, this path was chosen for me, and I showed up, and here I am after all these years. And it's, looking back in hindsight, there's a different level of wisdom and context to things, but there's just such a sweet beauty to the journey that I've been on. I had my own mothering of myself that I didn't even know was even needed, or I probably, even at that stage in my 20s, I didn't even recognize, the awareness. To me, I think I looked at motherhood as as an extension, that my own ignorance, I didn't recognize that it was an inflow and a receiving. Of course, any great lover, there's a giving and a receiving, there's an offering and a receiving, both perspectives happening. And I think as there was, I experienced a number of miscarriages in my 30s as well. And there were so many times that it felt like, I would never be, quote unquote, a biological mother. But what happened through that journey, it was my own path back to my own wholeness, I think, we already are that. It's probably just the recognition of that. And part of that path was actually learning to nurture myself, what I would extend to another, I'm a lover. I love to take care of people and light people up. And yet it would feel so natural for me to do that to anybody in my proximity. And yet, did I always take the time to take care of this body and being, and I didn't. Right. I didn't. And I think at this stage through life experience, and also just looking back, I recognize like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that this little one came now, because I, stumbled upon through grace the gift of nourishing and mothering my own self.
I think that there's, another thing that you and Tony teach at nearly every program is, when you're on that airplane and there's turbulence, do they say, okay, put your oxygen mask on you first? It's like even
true.
if you're sitting next to an infant.
Mm-hmm.
So when you speak about mothering of self,
Mm.
and letting that love come to yourself first, and the importance of that,
Yes.
whether you do have children
Mm-hmm.
for your own, so that you can be your best self for them, or
Mhm.
whether you don't have children,
Mm-hmm.
there is, even when you in the beginning there, when you mentioned as a sponsor, it reminds me of anyone who is in, whether you're in the program or whether you've had any kind of sobering up of any
Mhm.
kind, if you have to leave an old self and give birth to a new
Yes.
identity, then you do have to kind of mother yourself
Yes.
through a transition, and you have to be there for yourself in a
Mhm.
way that almost that no one else can but you.
Very true.
And so there's that kind of, essential survival
Mhm.
oxygen mask kind of love that,
Mhm.
especially if you're at a point like that
Yes.
also has to be celebrated, I
Mhm.
think,
I
for all
agree.
those who have made that transition as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think, whether it be addiction, but even without addiction, we're all, pulling our pieces back.
That's a beautiful way to say it.
And we all, I think there's life in birth. There's like I can look at a picture of myself a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and think, oh my gosh, like I have compassion for her. I see her and from this perspective, a little more life experience, a little more wisdom. It's like I would choose differently today than I did a year ago. And once again, I think that's the gift that this human experience offers us, is the gift of evolution, the gift to begin again, the gift to be reborn, the gift to renew, to restore. And I think that that's the essential energies of mother energies, is that restoration. And that's the beautiful gift when we're holding the space for another through sponsoring life. I love that you've mentioned AA. My own parents, as I mentioned, they've sponsored individuals their whole life. There was always strangers coming into our home, and whether it be through the holidays or, Christmas dinner or something of that nature. And, the welcoming and the celebration with this beautiful human, and it schooled us as children to accept and to open our heart and our mind. And selfishly, sometimes it was like, no, I just want to be with you know what I mean? Now being an adult woman and being able to live that reality and pay that forward in my own unique way. I don't know. I think that's the universe. I think that's where we all meet. And I really feel like that's the gift, whether you're a parent, whether you're not, whether you're longing to be a mother. In my longing to be a mom, a lot of times in my own suffering, because of what life was offering me was different than my own, mind of the thought of the way I wanted or perceived it to be. In those moments, I was missing what life was offering me. And yet from this perspective, I can look back and be like, oh gosh, sweetheart, there was so much that was happening, and so much life to be lived and to be experienced right in front of us. And I think that's the beautiful gift of this journey we're all on.
Mm-hmm. And you've said this a few ways, using words like acceptance and surrender and out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
That thread I've noticed has kind of woven through a few of your responses here today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something too that I think is so interesting. When I think of, in the past, I suppose, maybe before I became a mom, when I think of a parent, I kind of think of more control.
Mm.
And I realize that honestly, what would make a great loving parent is realizing that at some point you have to surrender control, not to your
Yes.
child, not hand over the reins and let your kid,
Mm-hmm.
Do anything you want, but also that their path is in many ways, while you have influence, as Tony would say, you have influence, but you don't have control.
No.
And especially, like we have friends, for example, that have lost a child to an opioid addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see a parent, kind of the tragedies of parenthood and motherhood too,
Yes.
when you have that love, immeasurable love, and this is something that you have to at some point surrender and say,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, this child's path is out of my control.
Mm-hmm.
And even we both have, we know parents that are outstanding people and outstanding parents, and maybe their children are making decisions that they wish they weren't making, and they
Mm-hmm.
could be harmful, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And even that part of, that's life. That's not just motherhood or parenthood. That's,
It is.
wow, there is a level of surrender,
Mm-hmm.
whatever word feels true to anyone listening. Maybe surrender. If it's not surrender, it's acceptance, it's acknowledgement that I, little me, do not have as much control as maybe I wish I had. But there's like an evolution that I think that comes, especially in any kind of parenting role of, yeah, this is out of my hands.
It's very true.
Let it be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let go, let God, as my mom would say. And there's
Yes.
something there. It's like, I'm just starting now to understand all these little isms and catchphrases that my mom, I used to make fun of. And now I'm like, man, she was right. She was so right. You know?
Your mom is lovely. I think, you know, we're blessed with amazing parents. My parents as well, like they had two of my siblings, you know, dealt with addiction, opioid addiction. And, you know, watching the pain of that, watching the, you know, the worry, the obsession, the enabling, you know, all the dynamics that happen in the human play. And it's ironic, you know, I thought I knew what surrender was in my 30s. In my 20s, I remember reading books about it. It's like, oh yeah, I surrender all the time. The truth is we do in each breath, you know, we let go and we come back to a greater truth. But wow, you know, I think one of the greatest gifts in AA is, you know, the notion of one day at a time, or their prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I said that prayer throughout my entire life. And I remember praying it, and I said the words, and I didn't understand the words. And from this perspective, the wisdom in that prayer, you know, the wisdom to know what, you know, what you can change and what you can't change, the wisdom to know that, gosh, I'm completely out of control, and that there's, you know, a larger force that beats our hearts, that breathes us. And I think surrendering to, you know, God of understanding, to, you know, whatever that looks like for you. I think that's where we come to a surrender of peace. I think that's really what faith, no matter what that looks like, whether it's in a religion, outside of a religion, in an organization, you know, life is kind enough. It gives us a choice to find what's true uniquely to ourselves. And my parents were super cool. My mom, you know, you mentioned your mama. My mama was the experience of, you know, gosh, she embodied mother energies and was overflowing and is overflowing with life, with joy, with passion, with playfulness. Cookies. And always nourishing, whether it's, you know, you walk into her home and my parents' home and you just feel like enveloped, you feel hugged by that space. And, you know, my mama's love of life and my parents' servitude to life. Just like yesterday, I called my parents and, you know, they're in their 70s at this stage. And there was a family member that was in the hospital and dealing with some, you know, challenges and depression. And, you know, my mom and daddy, they were sponsoring life. You know, they're looking to be present and just to be an ear and to, you know, be a mirror to this individual that they're loved.
And they're a great example. Like anyone who knows your mom and dad, you have a big family.
I do.
But there's so many people that know your mom and dad that, like, I might bump into somewhere at one of our events or something, and everybody's like, "Oh, mom and dad were just at your house." Like the number of people that call your mom and dad,
It's true.
mom and dad. That's another thing that I just think speaks to this theme that we're trying to hammer in here, is that it's not, we're not limiting this to biological children by any stretch, because there's so many ways to sponsor life,
Yes.
to advocate for life, to just to be that mentor for someone, age aside. It's not even that. It's not about, it's just about so much more. It's love. It's love. Let's just call it what it is.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful to recognize that. Like, I look at, you know, my parents are such a beautiful example, but all the ways that, you know, they express love, all the ways that they support, all the way, their thoughtfulness, their consideration, their kindness. I was blessed with a remarkable example. And, you asked me of what I would want to instill upon, our daughter. And I think it's just that. It's we're gifted and blessed with the gift of life. We wake up in the morning, it's like, hello, I'm alive. I'm like this, we're spinning on this planet and my heart is beating, and like just even sitting here, there's these lights and this microphone, and this is going to be projected out, and some of you are going to be driving to work, hopefully we're somewhere doing something and listening to this. Like, that's just crazy, the crazy sheer miracle of life. And I think to connect to that reality, to connect to the beauty, to come back to the core. Like, there's so much external right now that's distracting us from what's really meaningful, and possibly a broader perception or a broader understanding, rather than what we recognize on our social media, what we might read in our social media, what we might hear in the news. And I don't know, I think it's that core essence of allowing that, calling them mother energies, calling it essence, whatever name you want to give it, or just simply love. I think allowing that to lead and to extend on social media. There's a lot of confusion there. There's a lot of people maybe, sponsoring something else, it can be a culture of sometimes innocently tearing people down, or, meta commenting of what one doesn't like. Or it's like, what about just like offering and being like, gosh, you know what? Like, offering kindness, offering sincerity, acknowledging, like, that is how this shifts. It starts with me, it starts with you, and it starts with each of us recognizing that, gosh, I'm here, and it's a gift to be alive. And I've been blessed with life, and how I live my life, and how I touch life. I think that's the greatest blessing and gift back to this reality and this existence and this moment.
It's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And I think I would add too, so no one would even misunderstand, that when you say this whole, gift of life and this blessing of life, that's not to say that it's without, the challenges.
Of course.
And even, you and Tony have a friend in Ken Wilber who, this phrase gets thrown around a lot, but like grit and grace,
Yes.
that makes me think of what it is to sponsor life. There's grit and there's grace. There's this fragility of life and this fierceness. Like, we watch a lot of Animal Planet with our little one, and you see we're sitting in this library right now recording this podcast, and there's a giant elephant painting that I'm looking at over Stage's head, and I'm thinking about, we watched this one episode of these matriarchal elephants like leading the pack, and it's like the physicality of it, and there's like this spiritual welfare element that is taken on too through.
And I think also, like, you mentioned about, life, and, there's the beauty of it, and the mess of it, and the sweetness of it, and the pain of it. And so, that's not to say that there isn't challenges and that there isn't pain in moments, or, like right now what's happening on the world stage. But we can contribute to the schism, or we can be a balm. We can be a balm of kindness and goodness, and look to bring, love, light, illumination, presence, connectedness, to be an ear, to listen. It's amazing how that can shift another's world. I know what it feels like for me to receive that. I know what it feels like to offer that. And I think that's a beautiful reality, that sometimes in the busyness of life, we can forget how impactful in a moment that we can touch another, that we can reach another, that we can move another, that we can remind another, because we're mirroring each other. And as we're offering that, we're experiencing that. Everything that I'm saying to you in this moment, it's really all selfishly for myself. Life is such a beautiful house of mirrors. We're all reflecting each other.
This is true.
Tony always says that in nature there are no straight lines. And certainly my own path to motherhood was not a straight line. And there was times of disillusionment. There was times of loss. For every mother that's out there that's ever miscarried, the grief that can, pair with that, or that you experience through that process. And also on the other side of that comes deep healing and new birth and rebirth of oneself, different than, the expectation or the desire to have a child. And I look at all those points in my life that over a 20-year period, and the hopes and the dreams and the desires and the wants. And there was probably over a 10-year decade that I had thought, you know what, I think this ship has sailed, and completely let go of even the notion of ever being a mother, and life continued to surprise me. And I'd mentioned earlier about, self-nurturing and healing. And I think that was probably one of the unexpected gifts of this path, was my own personal journey. And for those of you who are walking this path, and maybe you've just lost a little one, or you're going through, certain type of fertility treatments, just know that sometimes, it can look different, can be longer. And, I never imagined that I'd be in my late 40s and being a mom. And it blows my mind, it blows my heart, and it's been the most incredible experience of my life. And it was so worth the wait. And, you witnessed pieces of that journey, and all of those things, and all the time and effort and the physicality of what it took for women that are out there, those flipping injections in your tush, my word. But it was a wild, beautiful ride. And, I prayed about it, and I knew that I'd be led, but never in my wildest dreams did I think that God would send me somebody so sincere and so lovely as you to carry our little one. And so, I look at how you birthed life, you sponsored life, you offered life to this little one. Our daughter wouldn't be here without you. And, I felt that this was important to share because, we're living in a world where, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's chemicals or hormones or what, but there seems to be more and more families and individuals, both men and women, that are having challenges to conceive. And like I said, for my own journey, it was a 20-year journey, and there was a lot of unexpected loss, but there was also so many unexpected blessings. And this unique constellation of this family, how it's all come together, it blows my mind and heart. And Mary B., you sponsored life in the most meaningful and unexpected way. Our daughter wouldn't be here without you. And it was a decision that you made that took such incredible courage. It was bold. It was beautiful. It was kind. It was generous. And I know I've thanked you, but I thought it was appropriate in this moment to say thank you. You were so gracious in offering to carry our little one as a surrogate. I wasn't able to carry, as you know, and I have a rare genetic disorder. And so, never in my wildest dreams, in my deepest heart of prayers, could have I imagined God sending somebody as sincere and true as you. So thank you. God is good.
Well, thank you. Never in my wildest dreams either, I think I must say. And this has been such a gift to me. And I don't know even quite where to begin. I did not think it would end in our little modern family that is created. No, there's no way. You could have told me that 10 years ago and I wouldn't have believed you. How could I? But necessity is the mother of invention, and getting to know you and Tony as I did, and hearing that this was something that you would need someone to make this happen. We didn't even discuss it. We never had a conversation about it. People ask me, like, how did this even come about? And it was like an understanding, a happening of when I found out that they would need someone to carry. All of a sudden, there was this little voice. And I never had any intentions of having children myself, but it was just like, I'll do it. I would love to do that. And to be able to be a mother is something I never thought I would get to experience. And I'm so grateful that I have this gift. Thank you both. Lucky me.
Lucky me.
Well, thank you. I was going to share, when our child was just born, friends of mine came over and they had a little gift, and it was a frame of Khalil Gibran's poem on children.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I read it at that moment, and cried my eyes out at that, the line and just the notion that your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself.
Mm.
And I just think that idea that, when you look in the eyes of children, that is what, like, when we look at all the turmoil and what's going on in the world right now, as adults, it's scary as adults. It's scary as an adult to watch the news these days. And then to think about it in the context of protecting, not even protecting, I don't think that's the right word. I honestly don't know that it's about protection as much as it's about sponsoring life and making it, making the world worthy of the children that we have. There's another quote, Pablo Casals, that said, "Make this world worthy of its children." And as I never in my wildest dreams imagined being a mom and how this has come to be, now it's shifted my whole perspective on what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. And what Tony would call it the ultimate outcome. We have many outcomes throughout a day, but what's really your ultimate outcome? And if purpose is too nebulous of an idea, which I don't think it is, but if you can say to yourself, like, really, and parents often talk about kids saying the darndest things. It's like kids will ask you that question, like, what's the meaning of life? Like, what are we doing here? What's it all about? It's a good time to think about those questions for all of us, no matter who we are or what we're doing, because we're all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't
beautiful.
We? Yeah.
I think that's where we all come together. We've all experienced loss in moments. We've all experienced joy. We've all experienced pain. We've all experienced, I think that's the flight of the human experience. Mm. And it's always calling us home. One of the gifts of the pandemic, and I think it was probably even happening before that, is, I feel that possibly the model of what a family looks like, it's ever evolving. And, I mentioned in my own family how we fostered, and it was also his, hers, and ours. My daddy was married before, my mommy was married before, they had children, then they got together and, they had me, and then we fostered children. So there was this unique dynamic of diversity of these worlds and lives coming together. And then there was chosen family, family that individuals that, come into your life for a period of time or for forever, that, has a meaningful impact. And I feel like in today's world that family is birthing a new reality of choice and constellation and ways about co-parenting and how people kind of, are stepping into what it looks like to be a parent, to be a mother, to be a father. It's so much broader. A very dear, beloved friend of ours was just over for dinner the other night, and he's a single man. He's on his own. He's a gay man from Iran. And, he, through the gift of surrogacy as well, just had a baby girl. And as well, he has this, I think, like a 2.5-year-old son. And I look at this cool man, so freaking courageous, and he's doing it. And it was his dream to be a father. And he's doing it on his terms. And he's such a love. He's such a dear heart. And I'm just so inspired to be around him and to learn from him and to listen to him. And I think it was just such a courageous choice. And I think that's also just for parents that are out there, for those of you that are on the path, maybe walking this path, and maybe you have a longing in your heart. Gosh, there's so many babes in this world that so could use love. There's so many displaced children right now with what's happening in the war in Ukraine. There's so many places of opportunity that, we can support life, whether it's for a short time, a period of time, or for your life. And life is so kind because it's so uniquely diverse of how it can come together. And I think when we follow our heart, we follow our guidance, our intuition, our instinct with things, it unfolds. And it unfolds so much more beautifully from my own experience than the way I wanted it to or I thought I wanted it to.
Expectation.
Yes.
Expectation that we might all have in our younger days. And then something else unfolds. And it might look nothing like we expected, but isn't it beautiful?
Isn't it beautiful? So for those of you watching, thank you for your willing hearts and your receptivity to tune in. It's beautiful to have a conversation. Mary B., maybe about a month ago, reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in having a conversation. And I was laying in bed one night thinking, gosh, like motherhood, what does it really mean? And I recognize that it's so much larger than the identity of mother. And that, we're all blessed and born with intrinsic attributes. And I say they're divine because we were all gifted with life. So the source that beats your hearts, that's what I'm speaking of. And there is a mother aspect of it or feminine aspect of it and a father or masculine aspect of it within each of us, whether we're male or female. And I think recognizing that gives us tremendous freedom and gives us tremendous creativity. And allows us to have access to both within. A lot of times, I think innocently, we think we need to go outside of ourselves to experience that, even though we do have that reflection. But we have a whole universe within inside of ourselves. And I think coming into Mother's Day, it just felt highly appropriate and sincere to be able to offer just a sliver of the gift of what it means to be a mother, what it means to serve life, what it means to embody and extend and touch upon something sincere, which is those divine attributes of the divine feminine within inside of ourselves.
Well said, Sage Robbins. Well said. Well, as a new mother, we certainly are still learning every day.
Yes.
But I feel like we've learned so much already. What are some of the lessons that you've learned already from relating to this little being?
Gosh, number one, how much innate intelligence is already within them. And I think in my own ignorance or projection that, once a child or an infant is able to identify or to speak, that there's a different level of intelligence. But watching our daughter express and like she has her when we bring her down in the morning, we have like a little kind of a playpen, and she'll go in there, and we call it her quiet reflection time because she'll right after we give her the bottle and so forth, and then we'll place her in there. And what's so amazing to me is to watch her laugh, to watch her giggle, to watch her awe, to watch her wonder, to watch her troubleshooting, to watch her exploring and recognizing that this like perfect consciousness, her essence is so alive. And a lot of times we as parents, we think it's like, oh gosh, I'm making her happy. What I just did made her smile or made her giggle. And yes, that might be so, but what is more accurate and what I experience is just the beauty of her essence that's just flowing. And I actually have a desire to create more of a space that she can actually experience herself. And it's so interesting because, in the world of technology and devices and, whether iPads and so forth. And by the way, they all have a beautiful gift and a place in our life. But they also pull our attention outside of ourselves. They pull our attention to other people's lives. They pull our attention out of the moment of what we're experiencing here and now. And so, it surprised me of like almost like the, not old fashioned, but the simplicity, I suppose, of toys that I just feel attracted to. The ones that don't light up, the ones that don't entertain. Just because, like, just letting her be with herself And, I don't know, there's so much distraction calling ourself external. And what I recognize, and we spend our whole lives trying to return back home, I'll speak for myself, through practice of meditation and inquiry and prayerfulness and, being aware and catching ourselves through this human experience. It's like, we're all living that reality to come back home and just seeing the perfection that they're born and that sweetness and that reality. I don't want to interrupt it.
Yeah,
I really don't. I don't want to interrupt it. It's too beautiful.
Me too. I love that idea of just let them be, that less is more.
Yes, do less. That's correct.
We read a lot of books in this house, and since becoming parents, we send a lot of articles back and forth, and you sent me one. And I think if I was asked the best parenting advice that I've come upon yet, and I know I'm brand new, I don't pretend to be an expert by any stretch, but one of the articles you texted me the other day was, I can't remember the article, but it was 10 bullet points from the Magda Gerber Rye philosophy, Rye, R-I-E. Magda Gerber, the late great, born in Hungary, passed away in Silver Lake. And she has this philosophy that we should just, that parents can kind of back off a little bit. I'm paraphrasing. That's not what she says, but just that to respect their space, that they're active learners and explorers and self-teachers. And so not to muddle their experience too much, keep them safe. And so one of those bullet points that I think is, if I forget everything else, the thing that I cling to that's really stuck with me said simply, observe more, do less.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that mantra. And it's hard because these babies are so stinking cute and you want to cuddle them and play with them and sling them around. But to have the discernment, which is a word, Sage, that you use so often, just to let this child do their thing. They're endowed with it. They're walk-ons. They come into the world with so much. And I think we can, as adults, with the best of intentions, get in there. And when really they don't need anything from us.
Helicopter parent. That's what I helicopter innocently.
Yep.
I think, yes, that might be a touch of hypervigilance. And I practice every day to just, I'm like, okay, let that be or let that go or don't be that mother. But I do, I watch it. She schools me every day. And what I'm most schooled by is the sweetness that pours out of this little one's being. It's so beautiful. And it's such a beautiful mirror. And it shows me myself. It shows me all of our, just that, like, what? That's inside of us. That's who we are when we are of right mind. When we don't have all the shoulds and shouldn'ts of life, or he should, she should, or however that manifests. When we don't have, as Byron Katie so beautifully says, she calls like the stickies that, it's like having a sticky pad. And Mary, if I'm like, you're too this, you're too loud, I put a sticky over. You're this, you're that. And before you know, we're not seeing each other.
You have a refrigerator covered in Post-it notes and you can no longer see the refrigerator.
Yes.
That's kind of what we do to each other with our beliefs about each other.
Yes, the limited beliefs about each other. And I think what's so gorgeous as a child is they don't have those identities. Even walking outside and, say if like she's noticing a moon or the stars, and I notice how quick I am to be like, oh, honey, stars, moon. But then it's like, what's more beautiful?
The label word, or the experience.
I'm projecting and identifying and putting a label on something, but like actually what's more beautiful is her response of just, ba, which I whatever, ba, everything's ba. But how cool that ba, like just this beauty of appreciation of life. And so something that we've done for those of you that are parents is like, say if we go outside and we go for a walk, maybe one time we do identify what we're seeing. So, yes, we're going for a walk, or, looking at a star, whatever it might be, and we might put identification or a label, whatever you want to call it. But then we also look to have time where we're outside and there's no labels. It's just her experiencing. Because it's like you think like being outside and feeling the wind or feeling the sun, or the other day there was this little bug and like watching her like just connect to this little creature that was, crawling on the ground. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It humbles me. She schools me. I've never learned more about life, never mind myself, never mind her. And every day is just a really cool exploration.
True. Well, Sage Robbins, this was fun. Thank you for sitting down and having this conversation. And while we have opened it up so broadly, which I'm so grateful we did, I also want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers of all kinds out there. Happy Mother's Day to your mom and my mom, too.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. And happy Mother's Day to all of you out there that, are already or from this conversation maybe moved to touch life that much deeper and looking for ways to connect or serve those around you. So bless you for that reality, and thanks for tuning in. Thank you. We love you.
Thank the moms in your life, whatever they look like, wherever they come from. Call your mother.
Yeah.
If you can, if you got one to call, find one, give her a call. And I look forward to doing this for Father's Day too, just to be clear.
Likewise.
So we got to talk about those dads too someday.
Likewise.
Perfect. Well, enjoy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
so
much
for tuning
listening.
in. We appreciate it.